microphone? Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay, hi. Hi, everybody. As we're all getting settled in, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Carolina Tornesi McKinnon, and I'm the current president of the World Youth Parliament for Water. Thank you all so much for joining in on this really exciting session. Before I go into our schedule, I want to thank the co-convening organizations, the International Water Management Institute, Alliance for Water Stewardship, Global Water Partnership, Government of South Africa, Department of Water and Sanitation, the Nature Conservancy, the World Youth Parliament for Water, University of Oxford, and of course, ARUP. So before I go into the framing, the World Youth Parliament for Water was invited to take this journey exactly a year ago. And we have been functioning as co-conveners, as youth co-guardians, and giving feedback to this process and being an instrumental part. It's been an incredible process, and I'm really excited to present all that we've done so far. And there's still more to do, so that's why we're here. Innovation systems is a concept that brings together the actors that are needed to bring new ideas through to large-scale change and transformation, whether it's in terms of technology or institutions or policy or finance, et cetera. So innovation doesn't have one way to innovate, but it's kind of how it all intersects in a new, innovative way. In an innovation system, we expect to see the actions of people, institutions, businesses, governments interact and combine to take ideas through to change. With information and technology and other resources flowing to reinforce innovation and the processes of adoption and change. Our two main outcomes and our two main questions that we're posing to you all is, can we use missions that are shared across actors to catalyze collective action on innovation or water security? Where by missions, we mean high ambition, focused goals for change against which actors can align and convene. So can we take these missions and really make some positive change? The session has 4 segments. It will be first a keynote presentation from Dr. Jennifer Molwantois on innovation systems for water security. Second, a video showcasing the transformative futures for water security dialogue, which took place earlier this year in South Africa, which generated a set of stakeholder-driven missions for water security. Third, some brief testimonials or stories about using mission thinking in water security, and a discussion of lessons for collective action. And finally, a panel that will reflect on how to strengthen collective action on innovation for water security, including policy implications for innovation systems and for how we approach research to water security. So we're going to have a keynote speaker. We're going to go through the missions. We'll see how we came about with those missions through the video, and then we'll have some panels reflecting on that. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Jennifer Molwantois, Chief Executive of Water Research Council of South Africa.
Answering the questions, I think the methodology and how we get there is very important. For me, for us to be able to achieve a high ambition future for water security really requires of us to bring everybody on board, to have all hands on deck. And when I say to bring everybody on board, we need to bring the specialists, we need to bring the policy makers and the decision makers, but we also have to bring the communities along who will be the beneficiaries of this water secure future that we anticipate to have. As it's been said, I'm Jennifer Molwantois from the Water Research Commission in South Africa. We understand that water security and sanitation delivery is complex, And in developing countries with limited economic growth, significant social injustice, and institutions being strengthened, there are many demands. But if one only looks at water security and sanitation through the Western infrastructure lens, it's going to be very difficult for us to achieve the future that we anticipate. We also will fail to see and understand the complexity and issues of social justice on the ground. We know that population growth is placing a lot of demand on water security. We understand that there are challenges around supply and demand of infrastructure, not only to maintain the old infrastructure or to retrofit it to ensure that it is secure and it is innovative, but we still have got a lot of people that are still in the who have not been served. Water scarcity and stress is placing another stress on water security, including water quality deterioration and health, as well as climate change. In South Africa, where you live determines the options that are provided or are available to you for water supply and sanitation. Now, when you can see on this picture, we have got what we call inequality, we've got equality, we've got equity, and we've got justice. So depending on where you sit and where you come from, this means different things to you. But in essence, we really have to ask the question, can innovation change this reality? And do we have the appropriate innovation systems to contribute to the transformational needs? I think the most critical point to ask is what policy positions and innovation policies do we have to implement? Historically in South Africa, we were and are still applying the research development and regulation, which is shown there in frame 1, where it has been what has been dominated between the 60s. The WRC, I mean, it's a 50-year-old organization. But what likely that means is that there will be incremental changes to protect the environment and to make sure that research and innovation results in changes. But in the last few years, in the last decade, there was the establishment of the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa, which previously used to be called Department of Science and Technology. This is a good idea because then here we've got the national systems of innovation. However, we have realized that it could not be fully funded due to the myriad of challenges, and it could not also meet all of the demands. This innovation policy frame could not deliver what we call intensification of international competition, globalization, the prospects of being left behind, and the promise of catching up, as it could only deal with the fundamental challenge of inclusivity, equity, fairness, and social justice. So what innovation policies should be applied? If you're looking at this now, we're moving on to, we have historically done frame 1, and we have, with the establishment of the national systems of innovation, moved into frame 2, but we really have to be playing in this transformational change, which we say it is emerging. We really need to transition into the transformative challenge, and how to do that, we really have to adapt and use what we call the theory of change. We have to be more intentional on the outcomes of inclusive sustainability, inequality, and climate change. And that is where we're saying we have to bring everybody with us. So we have to have the clear discussions. Everybody has to understand this water security talk, not just as a buzzword, but what it really means for me as a rural woman from the village, for you as an economist, for a policymaker, as well as an innovator. Therefore, if we do not fully understand the end game and want to use innovation to lead the way to a new future, then we need to adopt the following: a mission-oriented approach. And I think this challenge that we're having in this discussion today has started 2-3 years back in South Africa, where you had different people from different walks of life, from different countries, participating and really unlocking and breaking it down to simpler, breaking down the complexity to simpler and understandable missions. We also have to have what we call a grand challenge approach. In that we had to really drive people out of the comfort zone of what we call historic and innovation and research and development, but make people understand that it's no longer about research products, but it's about innovation and how we implement this. And therefore, we have to have a transformative outcomes approach. From the Water Research Commission, we have, in collaboration with partners, explored the innovation policy that we're speaking about, and for the requirements of that, we have had to have 3 specific key programs. The first one is a STEP, which is a mission-oriented, transformative outcomes policy, social, and technological and economical approach. The second one is the WADA program, where we have looked at a developmental approach, where we have looked at small and medium enterprises and innovators and said, let's see what you bring into the table and how do we then take those technologies all the way through to being applicable. The last one is a local scale, it's the Guyana local scale climate change program, where we have actually taken a local community and businesses and decision makers and local government, and we have embarked on a mission-oriented terms of approach, as well as making sure that there are changes within the governance, social, and the technological approaches. In terms of the SUSTEP program, the key success factors are that there has been significant funds and there has been flexibility and agility to move towards the right outcomes. So we have not only said we want new sanitation, we have said we are going to fund innovators for a certain period, we are going to have them compete against each other in order to be able to see the change that we are aspiring to. We had to work on a collaborative effort with other countries and other role players from across the globe. We also had to look at longer-term funding. Historically, we would fund a project 2-3 years, but when you're looking at innovation, you have to be really focused on longer-term funding. We looked at a multidisciplinary approach as well. Not only did we look at the technical and the scientific approach, but we also had to look at the social impact. We had to look at how people experience these technologies, what they think of them, and would they buy in and accept such technologies. And then we had to also create new benchmarks, practices, and standards, as well as to have segmented stakeholder engagements. In terms of the WADA approach and the WADA program, we have looked at this as what we call the Sector Technology Accelerator. We started up with a group of about 30 innovators where they were trained, where they were explained what are these big challenges. We showed them what are the new technologies that are available out there that they had to adopt, they had to localize, they had to make sure that they are able to be ready for the market. And in that, what was also key is that it was an inclusive approach. It wasn't your researchers in the true sense in the universities only. We also looked at small and medium enterprises. We focused on the inclusiveness of women as well as historically disadvantaged people. And that program was led by the Water Research Commission together with the UNDP and the Department of Science and Technology. And we did some test bed demonstration which are scattered throughout South Africa. In building the climate resilience and at local government, we've looked at the local, Guyana local scale climate resilience program, and that is funded by the government of Flanders. We worked with some of our stakeholders being award, the university, as well as a community stakeholder engagement. And there we were able to develop climate adaptation solutions at local community and catchment scale to benefit about 5,000 Guyana community members. But what was also important around this is that we looked at how they've always done things. So indigenous knowledge had to be brought through. How have they always survived without technology and innovation? And how do we then learn from them and enhance that to make sure that there's more focus around water utilization, which has to be sustainable. We had to also enhance what you call community resilience our communities have always been resilient, irrespective of where they're located and what they have been afforded or disadvantaged from getting. But lastly, we also had to look at local economic growth, and here we have to work with local government to say, not only are these technologies and innovations just for subsistence, but there can be businesses that are developed there, and you can therefore grow the local and rural economy in the places where it is. And through this program, the WRC was therefore enabling a community, business, and institutional stakeholders to engage and commit on water security and resilience issues. We are still a long way, I think, from achieving the high ambition in terms of water security. But I think what the case studies that we have shown at the Water Research Commission indicate is that you have to start somewhere. Firstly, you have to bring the people along. You have to be innovative and understand there are things we do not know and we need to learn from others. We have to collaborate with other people from elsewhere in the world. But most importantly, we have to put money in there, and you have to have a phased approach and multi-pronged approach. You can't have it one phase following the next one. It will take us decades. So in this regard, we are really striving towards this climate resilience, as well as using innovation to ensure that there is water security. Thank you very much, and I hope that this has really sparked some thinking around the speakers that are going to be here in order to showcase the different cases from different countries, but also what different entities are doing. It's not just government, it's not just communities, it's not just experts, it is all of us. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer Moluwanta. We really appreciate your input. And as I was listening, kind of the main message was water security and innovation requires diversity and inclusion. Before I go to our next slide, which is going to be the video of the dialogues, I want to talk a little bit more about what these dialogues were, how they came to be, and who was really involved in them. Spoiler, it was everybody, a lot of stakeholders. So this was based on South-South dialogue across 8 regions from the Global South, crossing from Southeast Asia all the way to Latin America. So this was really a global effort. It brought together, like I mentioned, all types of different stakeholders, from policy, development, business, and science, communities, with youth as co-guardians of those dialogues. It happened in December 2022, and in January 2023, over 400 organizations and 1,000 people contributed to these dialogues. So not only was this global, it was incredible. It had a lot of different types of stakeholders, but it also involved a lot of different people. With the dialogue culminating in a final conference in Cape Town in February, which finalized the designs of 8 missions that are inclusive, based in science and action, and all for water security. Now, we'll go into these missions later, but the video is going to show kind of what this conference was really all about.
Main reason why we chose to organize this conference is to have something different, to bring in people that normally don't talk to each other.
So we saw that the UN conference was a particular stopping point. If we were successful in bringing together not just scientists to talk about science and present PowerPoints, but rather bring together a whole variety of stakeholders to talk about what the future looks like and how we might get there.
What I've captured here is really the goal for the whole conference, which is we're here to develop high ambition collective actions to deliver future water security.
Let's agree as we begin this conference that we're not here to have the same discussions that we always have at water conferences. Instead, let's agree to be bold.
To be in a position to imagine a whole different future around water. We will rely on research, development and innovation, on the private sector, on communities and individuals to come up with new ways and new thinking.
Take the water discussions out of the water sector so that you can then have other fields of study or sciences.
Water connects all the SDGs, and just as the global water crisis imperils achievement of all of them, it's water security that accelerates the achievement of our goals.
The youth co-hosts to tell us about the themes that emerged from our work together.
Circular economy is a sustainable alternative to the traditional linear, which is take, make, and dispose economic model.
In Zambia, we are facing two things at a time: drought and floods.
52% of the participants in this program are women. And when we hold meetings, almost about 60% of women really attend the meetings to hear about the way forward of conservation farming.
Agriculture is regarded as a fringe topic for most in the global north, whereas in the global south, depending on what country you look at, 40 to 80% of the population are directly dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods.
So how many smallholder farmers are we going to help? And it's not EME, it's all of us.
I think the level of investment, it's something maybe we should also speak to.
Water utilities play a vital role in addressing the global challenges. We are part of the solution, and we have to be more engaged in this kind of conferences.
The increase of water storage. There are many times when there is a lot of rainwater, but we do not have the capacity to store it.
But our starting point is focusing on decision making. In its current form, it's not fit for the future. So the mission is derived then from the challenge. The mission is inclusive decision making that puts water at the heart of sustainable development.
Smart water governance for all by all. We are talking about inclusive, participatory, equitable, accountable, responsible, and smart water governance that is implementable and multi-stakeholder driven.
Water is my work. It's fascinating to me because it's a system. It's systemic and it connects everything. So to have sustainable water management, we need to work in systemic ways. That means solutions require not just technology, they require institutions, they require negotiation, they require economics, they require the law. And I love how we weave those things together to take things forward.
Great. So I hope that you all enjoyed that video. It was really exciting to see the hard work that we did played back. These are the 8 missions that came out from all of those dialogues, from all the stakeholders. And the Transformative Futures for Water Security initiative committed in the Water Action Agenda to the UN Water Conference to develop coalitions to catalyze and promote action on the missions. So what's really important about these missions is that though there are 8, and I'll go through them, they are all coming together, focusing and moving in the same direction. We were having this discussion just before this session, and that they're all intersected, they're interlinked, and they're not just independent silo missions, but again, even how they're shown in the image, they're all working together. They're all touching upon similar themes, and they cross over, and that's what water is. So first, to address the critical systemic outcomes, build farmers' resilience to climate change and water risk, deliver sustainable stakeholder-driven WASH services, increase freshwater availability, make water infrastructure future-ready. And for the second 4 enabling missions, overcome data and information barriers, make water decisions fit for the future, deliver good water governance and transboundary cooperation, adapt to future water regimes and risks. If you're taking pictures, we'll have it in a few slides. But now I'd really like to move on to our first panel. And I ask that everybody participating in the panel come up, so it should be 5 plus me up here. I'll introduce you when we, yeah. But since we're going to have it as a dialogue, I think it's best if we. So as everybody's trickling in, the way that this will be set up is we're going to have 2 panel speakers, and then they're going to have 3 reactionary. But I want everybody up here, as this is a part of the dialogue and working on the missions together. So first up, we have Gonzalo Germán Meschingeiser, Foreign Affairs Manager of Agua y Saneamientos Argentinos, AISA. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Evie, Chiara, and Mark, for taking us into account to share our ideas, experience, and knowledge with this audience. Let me tell you that I don't know, 6 months ago, Chiara reached us out, explaining the goals, the objectives of IMI, and it was amazing for us because honestly, we didn't know the organization. It was a good news for us because not only we were invited to be part of the dialogue in Cape Town, but because it was the first time in history that Global South appeared as a concept that can link Latin America, Africa, Asia in a common view. At this moment, we started working in this new perspective. We had a lot of experiences working with North Global, or Global North, Europe, United States, Northern Asia as well, but never think in our own problems and challenges. So this was the first step we did to build a new approach to global challenges regarding water and stress mainly. Our participation in Cape Town not only show us this new concept of Global South, as mentioned before, but taught us that agriculture, as one of the speakers told in the video, need to be part of our strategy. We are a huge water utility which deliver drinking water and sanitation services to 15 million people, but we don't think about agriculture, industry, energy, and other uses of water. So this was our own start point to broaden our vision regarding to water challenges. Because we know if we don't think in these issues, we never will have a good view, a good understanding of what is happening with water in the region. The other thing that we learned during the dialogue in Cape Town was this approach, this bottom-up approach, trying to engage governments, organizations, companies to be involved in water issues. We are accustomed to work with our customers, but never inviting to the decision table to other stakeholders that are very, very important to what is happening with water itself. So this was the other learning we can bring to Latin America from Cape Town. And the last one is related to the 8 missions that we can see in the screen. In this case, for today, I have chosen the number 6, which talks about future. As you know, in Global South, we have a short-term view about the future. We think in 1 month, in 1 week, because every day we wake up in the morning and we have to deal with a lot of challenges as inequality, poverty, gender violence, and other things. And it is not easy for us to think in a long term, in 1 decade, 2 decades, or even 5 decades. So last year we started working in which academics call foresight, new techniques or methodology to be able to see beyond our week, our month. And it was very transformative for our company and for the region itself. As Chiara knows and Mark, ISA chair an organization called ALOAS, which is a kind of water utilities association. We have more than 140 members among Latin America. As you know, Latin America is a huge region with more than 600 million people living there, which links every 21 countries. Among the region is the language. We speak Spanish, with the exception of Brazil, who is Portuguese language spoken, and Suriname and Haiti, which speaks French or Dutch. And well, this organization, ALOAS, tries to give to the global north a unique voice of what is happening with water utilities in the region. But in this year, our goal is to try to engage companies to think about the future. So I think the most important learning from Cape Dialogue was the number 6. We push us forward to think about future, climate change, water leakage, non-renewable water, and other techniques challenge that can be overcome in the next year. If we don't do it, our people is going to go lack of water. Thank you very much, and I am available for whatever who want to talk during World Water Week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo. And I have to admit, I was a bit nervous and didn't introduce the question, so I do apologize. The two speakers, so Gonzalo and next will be Ashton, are talking about why are these missions important to me. I think it was pretty clear, so thank you, Gonzalo, for that, but I do apologize. So what I was hearing was outreach is incredibly important, and even in just this exercise, ISA and Latin America were identified individually through this outreach, because it's so important to include so many different types of stakeholders when doing this. The benefits of sharing, of having South-South dialogue, which is not so common in these global conferences, but also just in general, because there's different barriers in place, even if we think just geographically. But there's a lot of similarities, even if we're far apart on the globe. And finally, to look into the future. These are plans that we're making to achieve SDG 6, to assure that we have water, to assure we have sanitation for not just everybody in this room, not just for youth, but for generations to come. So thank you so much. Next, we have Ashton Pofu, who will be answering the same question, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Yeah, I think I may answer this question in many ways, but I think one important thing that came out of the dialogues that we had was the fact that it's not only for water professionals or people that work in the sector to solve these problems. I think this is one thing that most of the speakers touched on. So I chose to speak to mission number 7, which is an enabling mission. It says deliver good water governance and transboundary cooperation that is inclusive, participatory, equitable, accountable, responsive, and smart. So yeah, I think this is very important. As a young person, it was quite interesting to the fact that we were also included to have our voices to be heard. Many times we get seasoned professionals taking the privilege to decide our future as young people. The future that does not belong to seasoned professionals, but the future that belongs to us as young people. So we are the custodians of the future, so we must be given the right to decide what we envisage or what we want for the future. Your 10 years come, your 10 years gone. We are where we are today because our seasoned professionals made some of these decisions. So for us to be included, it was 16 of us. It was quite important to have our voices that we had. I mean, I listened to
South Pacific Asia. I listened to, I was involved in the dialogue of Southern Africa. The problems were the same, which tells me that human beings never learn. We all, we all do things similar, and until we get to this point where we are really in a crisis, then that's when we start to say, come, let's work together. So the fact that we inclusively, equitably so, and we all participated, young people included, it was quite important for me. So yeah, I think these missions are important to young people and myself included, because I think they speak to the things that we need to do to ensure that we reach water security. It is what I term a blue revolution. It cannot happen overnight. But these 8 missions, I think they can take us far as long as we all willingly and, focused, we put all or channel all our energies into ensuring that we live them. They cannot just end here on paper. We must actually ensure wherever we are, we live them and we push forward so that we reach water security. So as a young person, I employ it on young people and even seasoned professionals as well. Use young people, they've got the energy to implement some of these things. I know we become destructive at times. We have been termed to be people that are disorderly or that are known to be chaotic. But if you put your efforts into channeling this energy that sometimes becomes disruptive, yes, E is equal to MC squared. If you don't channel that energy properly, it's going to explode. But please, use your efforts, channel the energy of young people in a proper direction. Water security is possible. We can reach it as long as we use young people and we live these missions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashton, and I think you've left us on a really good point to move on to our reactions. But I just want to take your final point, and we have to act on these missions. It's not just about dialogue, but taking it to the next step. So thank you again for such a great intervention. Now, our panelists are going to react to both what was said and these few questions of what examples of joint action on water systems change can we learn from? Why is there fragmentation of action among stakeholders? And how is collective action across stakeholder groups catalyzed? First up for our panel reaction, I'd like to introduce Xavier Leflave, Environment Directorate Principal Administrator, OECD.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm really grateful to IMWI and all your partners for creating a space where we can really think about a theory of change. We can really think about collective action because this is badly needed. And if you think about it, there are not so many opportunities to have that kind of conversation in a water conference. At the same time, I feel a little bit awkward standing in front of you because really throughout the process, I've been listening and learning. So who am I now to try to lecture again? Another pale gray male, a seasoned professional, probably accountable for some of the dead ends that we are now facing. Still, I couldn't resist the opportunity, and I'd like to share a couple of thoughts about what it takes to move towards transformational change through collective action. I'll do that probably taking my OECD hat off, but you see that some of the points I'll make resonate with a new development that emerged in the last few months, which I would like to emphasize. There are 2 points I would like to highlight here on collective action and the conditions for collective action to reach transformational change. One is that we need to build coalitions. I'm very grateful that, we've been together for about 40 minutes talking about change. We haven't heard the word political will yet. And that's really refreshing because collective action actually goes against political will. And all this, almost mystical reliance on inspired political leaders, I think, is misleading. So it's really encouraging to see that we can really have a discussion about change without reference to political will. To do that, to build coalitions beyond water, I think we can build on increasing evidence that water is part of the solution of a number of challenges. Water is part of the solution to equity, sustainable development, climate mitigation, adaptation, food security. So we have in our hands the capacity to engage with all these communities, and that's, to me, that's the condition for collective action. The second point I would like to emphasize is that history matters. We are not starting from a blank sheet. There are legacies. Think about property rights. Think about water allocation regime. And the experience of South Africa was just illuminating earlier this morning. And as you said, our local communities, they know. They know how to be resilient. They have been resilient so far. So there is a lot to be learned from their experience, local knowledge, indigenous knowledge. So really considering history, this legacy, because that legacy creates the space for transformational change. If we ignore it, we will face a wall. So there is no alternative to looking back into history, building on these legacies to make change happen. It may sound paradoxical that you have to look back to the legacy to see where the space for change, but I would really, to me, that's really a condition for transformational change. These 2 points about building coalitions and investigating legacy and history are core to the program of work of the Global Commission on the Economics of Water. That's this new space or initiative that I alluded to earlier. For those who are not aware, this is a global commission that was set up about a year ago as an independent commission, funded and initiated by the Netherlands, but they really don't interfere with the work program. The OECD provides secretariat function. We're not members of the Global Commission. It's not an OECD thing, but we provide secretariat function. And we agreed to do that because we really think the Global Commission can be transformational. Its agenda is about new economics. Just like the Stern report changed our economic approach to climate change, Das Gupta review changed our economic approach to biodiversity. The ambition of the Global Commission is to change our economic approach to water. So a very strong pillar on economics, but just as strong a pillar on justice. What kind of theory of justice is required if we really want to make change happen and approach water as a global common good? One way the Global Commission will work differently from Stern and Das Gupta is that they want to do more than a report. They want to engage, build coalitions for action. And for that, they will engage in what we call societal dialogues, which will be opportunities to listen to local communities, in different parts of the world, in different sectors, city mayors, so a wide range of stakeholders which we want to engage with. The first step in that engagement process will be with the water community, and this will be a dedicated session this week on Thursday, 2 p.m., room A2. So I really encourage you to be there, attend, but not just attend, engage, because I think there is strong resonance between what you are trying to do here with this idea of innovation pathway and what the Global Commission is trying to do in the next year. So thanks very much for the opportunity. Apologies for the sales pitch for the Global Commission, but I really mean it. I really think that there are strong resonance between what we are doing here and what the Commission tries to achieve. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to our second panelist, Mark Fletcher, Director and Global Water Business Leader, ARUP.
First of all, thanks to Emmy and your partners for giving me the opportunity just to share in this and contribute some comments. I'm very encouraged and I'm very excited when I'm hearing the all hands on board, bottom-up approach, when I'm hearing about governance and when I'm hearing about the future. I think that's really important. I think from my perspective, it's important to see these as complementary missions with a real overarching common purpose around water security. And that's so that you get much more sort of alignment between the missions and looking at synergy. Don't think of them as independent silos, even though there might be separate issues. Think about synergy and interdependency. We're really thinking about systems, and we're thinking about systems of systems. And I think that came across with something Gonzalo mentioned earlier, when we're just thinking, for example, about agriculture and food systems and water. And we can use things, and I think Ashton just mentioned it, this idea of engaging local people and using things like governance and understanding roles and responsibilities across the water cycle to provide greater alignment. And we found that that was the sort of Rosetta Stone in the way in which we approached city resilience as a common overarching theme, where the governance brought everybody to the table, but engaging local people on local issues and coming up with local solutions. That local context is absolutely fundamental. And so I'm a little bit south-south with a touch of north, because that looked at cities like Kigali or Amman or Joburg or Durban. The other thing I'd touch on, and Gonzalo picked out the future, there was some work done on the future of urban water, which was, I think, picking up on our keynote speakers, this trend to urbanization in the global south, where we looked at Sao Paulo and Manila to look at what we could learn from rapidly urbanizing cities and how that could maybe feed into what we're doing into water security. And just to conclude, Mark talked about weaving together, and I see your missions a bit like strands that lead to string, and if we get this right, string that leads to rope. And that gives something that we can all pull on together in terms of a real bottom-up but collective action. So thanks for the opportunity and all the best with the initiative. And if we can help with anything, we will do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thanks for the imagery, strings that lead to rope and rope that we can all pull together. Next we have Manohar Karaka, IWMI Nepal Country Representative.
Very good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to share experience from the ground. I have been with the process of TFWS since last year. Now, some sort of reflection, what previous speaker also said. I think this TFW process is really multi-stakeholder driven and stakeholder going beyond the sector. So even bringing our multi-stakeholder stakeholder to the regional and global discussion in Cape Town that emerged the 6-8 mission, IEM mission, we had also country-specific dialogue. So this was the first opportunity to bring the stakeholder from not only water, the other sector, and also ranging from policymakers, science, civil society, private sector, and also community. So after the country consultation and country level dialogue, and we had a regional, and then we went to the Cape Town, and coming back to the Cape Town, again, this recently post-Cape Town in Nepal, we had a post-conference, I would say the post-Cape Town, but what does TFW mission means to the different stakeholders that we are engaging with, be part of the process. And we did a bit of two dialogue, roundtable dialogues. One is a federal level, as national level, another is province level. And we discussed these whole processes, and anyway, the stakeholders were part of the previous processes also, but it was very interestingly came up is that in a federal and both provincial level, stakeholders feel that this mission is part of their agenda, right? It is because they were involved in the process, and there was very much discussion with the different stakeholders. The priority out of 8 priority mission, it doesn't have all sector, different type of stakeholder choose priority, different mission. So it was very interesting discussion, but in a federal level, there was a discussion, something like that. I mean, it was a lot of discussion also, what next? And most of the agenda come up with is that there is a need for a policy. The policy is there to implement this mission in a Nepal context, and also there is a need for innovation in terms of science, technology, and research. It's very much gap. A stakeholder identified research, water science and research innovation is one of the process to support to implement this country level the TFW mission. And coming to the local level or province level, as you know, the Nepal has been moved from unitary system to federal system. We have 3 tiers of government, local government and provincial government, very newly established institution. There, this kind of dialogue is really rare, and then they even found the first time having 8, stakeholder from policymaker to practitioner, community, private sector, utility. This is first time there's a provincial level. They feel that this kind of dialogue, this kind of conversation around the TFWS processes should be continued. And even for them, the stakeholder in the province level found 8 missions, all are important. They choose all priority, but federal level, different stakeholder define different priority. But having said that, 2 lessons learned. And then once we have the mission, what next, right? So even we have started conversation on implementation, roadmap roadmap preparation for implementing the TFWS mission in Nepal context. And a lot of discussion we had. We have a steering committee, I will not say the steering committee, there is a small group of working group that we discuss what is going on, how do we move ahead. So there also we have discussed about the need of coalescence and alliance or coalition, not only the global level, but also country level, so that country level experiences on the implementation, learning, challenges of TFWS mission, keeping view that investment policy, science is very much integrated. So this kind of learning should be within the country, among the stakeholders within country, but not only country-specific experience should feed into the global. And same way, the global level alliance also has a role to bring the knowledge from the global fora to the country. So having said that, very much happy to be part of this process. As I said, in a film also we'll see this is not IMI agenda, it is our stakeholder-driven mission, but IMI is very much part of, very much happy to be leading this kind of facilitation, but it's a long way, and the next step is how to really concretize the action, operationalize the different activity or monitoring system to implement this TFWS mission. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manohara. And you guys can exit as I, no, thank you. So I'm an engineer, and we always, always start with the end in mind. So as I recap, the end here is the future, what we're going to do next. But I was listening to everybody here on stage. A few key messages came out. As we look to the future, there needs to be ownership. And for there to be ownership, this needs to be locally driven. This needs to be owned by the people that are where it's going to happen, where the ideas are going to come from, and where the solutions will be applied. There needs to be alignment. This is talking about coalitions working together, not thinking of this as independent missions, but as a collective action. And most importantly, or maybe not most importantly, but this is multi-generational, multi-stakeholder. This is across the globe. This is a together effort. So I want to say thank you again to everybody that spoke. I am now happy to hand it off to Inga Jacobs-Mata for the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good to be here. And building from the first panel, the idea of the second one is now to take a bit of a bird's eye view, take it up a notch. We've been busy with this initiative process for the past, a year now, Mark, probably, maybe longer. And we're actually at a nerve-wracking, if I do say so myself, it's a really nerve-wracking part of the process, because it's about how do you go from, this wonderfully participatory dialogue process that brought together thousands of stakeholders, hundreds of partners, and now how do you bring it into actionable missions? How do you get partners to align their strategic objectives, their programs, to working together right, in a region or in a country. So it's, we hope next year we can come back and say, okay, we've got something to show, but it's, you can imagine with all collective action processes, there's this time where it's like a bit of a make or break. So we're at that moment, and we want to invite the panelists for the second panel to share some views on what has worked in other similar processes of collective action in other sectors, perhaps. How do we build on? Javier, I'm sorry, I know you said political will was refreshing. We might bring it up in the second panel. Let's see, but it's about the enabling environment, right? So I'd like to invite the second panel up, please. And while they are coming up, I will introduce them. So we have Dr. Gabriel Lekalakala, who is the specialist scientist in the Directorate for Climate Change Analysis at the Department of Water and Sanitation in South Africa. Thank you, Gabriel. We also have Michael Alexander, who is the Global Head of Water, Environment and Agriculture Sustainability at Diageo. Thank you. Then we've got Dr. Veena Srinivasan, who is the Executive Director for Well Labs in India. Thank you. And online, we also have Maitri Adivi, who is the President of the Water Youth Network. Is she there? Not yet? Okay, she'll join. Welcome, Maitri, and welcome, panelists. So you've heard you can come closer because we're going to have a dialogue, right? So we'll jump around a bit. But you heard from the other speakers talking about sort of what worked and the experiences of the TFWS process. But I'd like to find out from you now what makes collective action or initiatives like this, participatory initiatives like this, really work to be sustainable. So let's start, Gabriel, if we could start with you. You work for government, you're in sort of a policy unit. What policies or enabling environment, we don't have to say political will, but maybe if it comes up, you can say it, but what policies or enabling environment factors are needed to make national innovation systems for water security fit for purpose, really action-oriented? Maybe you can just, I know it was a mouthful.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Go for it.
Well, first off, I'm a scientist, so, but I'll try to stay clear of political will. From the South African experience, it's been, we ensure that the synergy or ratification of international laws, such as your SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and our regional policies, your African Union agenda, and these are aligned with national policies, like our National Development Plan and our various...
Oh, yes. You're a bit taller than me.
Okay. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, thank you. And these are aligned and adopted into our national water policies and legislations. And these are implemented through what we call the National Water Master Plan. And basically the plan provides a diagnosis of, a diagnostic analysis of the water and sanitation issues, and it's used to, it's got a schedule of interventions and actions and investments required to enable the achievements of the diagnosed issues within the water sanitation.
Okay, so you're talking about sort of having that those policies, outcomes cascade down. In fact, it also comes back to Jennifer's point, right? Jennifer said we should focus on actionable outcomes. And you're saying if it's at the global level, how does it cascade down to national, subnational level? Yeah. All right, good. Thank you very much. Maybe let's move then to Veena, if I can ask you to also just comment on some of these levers or enablers for collective action in innovation systems.
Sure. And you put me down as a representative of research, so I'm going to talk as a researcher.
Or civil society,
research,
perhaps
civil
both.
society, innovation. Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. I think one of the big problems that what we have in kind of actually enabling collective action with people coming from very, very different backgrounds, everybody kind of starts with what I call a push mentality, which is like, I bring this to the table, here, take it. And I think one of the things that we struggle with, particularly researchers who think we will, tell you what's right and then you have to go and do it. We need to flip that around and kind of move towards a pull mindset, which is what does everybody else want and how can I service that? This sounds really trivial, but actually I've seen across the board, whether in research, whether in civil society, whether in innovation, it's the same problem. Everybody kind of says, here's what I bring, but not what do you need and how can I serve you? And I think that means that, for example, I was on a panel, Government of India has these grand challenges, very similar to a lot of countries. Lots of big corporates were involved. They said we need to improve water productivity, water efficiency, whatever. They funded a bunch of companies. And then there was this one company I was on an advisory panel for that was trying to give farmers advisory. And when we asked them the question, well, okay, you've started this company and you're expecting farmers to pay you. What did all the farmers in your user, what did your users say? And they hadn't actually done any user research. They hadn't actually spoken to a single farmer and yet got 2 rounds of funding to service farmers. So what I mean is people going in with saying, I have this great product or I have this great research, piece of research isn't going to solve a collective action problem until every single stakeholder switches their mindset to saying, what do you need that I can give you rather than here's what I have.
So really putting farmers at the center or users, communities at the center of policy making, at the center of the innovation system, right?
But with every single interaction. So for the company trying to service farmers, yes. But for me trying to work with corporates, for example, as a researcher, I might want to say, what do the corporates need in terms of metrics and so on that my research is able to enable. So I think every interaction between any 2 sets of stakeholders needs to be switched from what can I give you to what do you need.
Great, thank you for that, really valuable. Maybe, Veena picked up on sort of how do you engage with the private sector. Michael, and you come from that group. Maybe you can just share a little bit of the importance of collective action from a private sector perspective. I know Diageo is really involved in water stewardship, driving that. Maybe you can also share just some examples or parallels with the water stewardship process.
Yep. No, thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope Diageo wasn't the company you're referring to. I'm sure it wasn't. So yes, just very briefly, some of you may not have heard of Diageo. Diageo is a global alcohol beverage company with brands like Johnnie Walker, Guinness, Baileys, Smirnoff, and many others. And we're active in many southern hemisphere countries such as Mexico, Brazil, 7 or 8 countries in sub-Saharan Africa and West and East Africa, in India, Turkey and China and elsewhere. So about 1/3 of our total global production, we're the largest international alcohol beverage company, spirits company in the world. About 1/3 of our production is in the global south, is in water-stressed areas. So there's a very, very strong business rationale for investing in water, full stop, clearly. But why do we invest in water collective action? I think that's a question that some people might ask, and we view collective action as absolutely essential to our climate adaptation strategy. So if our businesses are going to continue to grow, and we've been in many of these countries for many decades, so 70, 80, 90 years we've been operating in these countries with our distilleries and breweries. So we view ourselves as local companies. We're not an international company with distributing into these countries. We're actually indigenous employers and contributors to the local GDP and economy, and that's important. And we recognize the earlier points that are made about local context and local solutions and local innovation. So that goes as said. But we very much view water as our main climate risk, and we need to manage water, and we need to work with others to manage water through collective action at a catchment level to manage our water risks, to help our supply chain adapt to climate and to enable our future growth, to be honest. It's not an altruistic, charitable, philanthropic type program. It's very much core to our business future, and that's key. And within that collective action, we do work with smallholder farmers to improve soil conditions, to provide clean water and sanitation, to harvest rainwater, to desilt dams, many in India and in Africa as well. And we work across the board with local implementing partners, because they've got the solutions, who have got the community engagement and the network with government and with, of course, the farmers themselves. Most of our work is with smallholder farmers. And that is absolutely critical. But that's not going to change the dial in the catchment in terms of our water risk. They're good projects, but they're too small scale. And we need scale. And that's why collective action, and we have a Pacific 2030 target around collective action, is to work with others, not led by us, but us participating in collective action, mostly at a catchment level, but we recognize that that needs to be also at a regional and national and international level of collective action, and we're involved in other forums to do that. So if we take, for example, Kenya, where we have a big brewery, two breweries, one in Nairobi, we're working in the Upper Tana, in the Mount Kenya water tower, to try and work with farmers, not just our farmers, but other farmers, to manage water better, working with the experts through the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund that TNC set up. So that's essential. We're not orchestrating it, we're not managing it, we're just inputting into it. And we know that we can't do it alone. But we do know that part of that solution in the collective action needs to be government, needs to be research, needs to be innovation, and we need the right policies in place in order to be enabling environment. And I think you mentioned it earlier. The enabling environment is absolutely key. So if we don't have an enabling environment, a proper catchment plan, a major infrastructure plan for water with proper investment that we can encourage as a contributor to the local GDP and an employer, we have a different kind of financial, commercial part of the conversation to add. It's not the only part, of course it isn't, but sometimes it's a little bit different, and it makes those that are considering funding listen sometimes. So it is really important for us, and there is urgency. That was one of the questions. There is a lot of urgency in many of these catchments where we're working for better collective action, and to rely on those that have the authority, if you like, and the credibility, not Diageo, to convene those collective actions across those multiple stakeholders, including civil society and youth and others, because it really will drive our climate adaptation resilience, but also, more importantly, the communities and supply chains. So it's absolutely fundamental to the future of our business, and I welcome this opportunity to share that.
Thanks, Michael. A really interesting view also on, well, first the investment plans at the catchment level. I think, Jennifer, you also mentioned sort of the need for this kind of longer term funding and sort of driven by a plan. And then you also gave an interesting example of the catchment level. I think what we're seeing with this initiative now is a bit of a messy process, if I can call it that, in the sense that different regions are taking up this initiative in different ways. So TFWS doesn't look the same in all the regions. Manahara gave the example of Nepal, where it's really sort of, you know, organized dialogues. In Central Asia, it looks very different. So really, I think just bringing out the uniqueness of the catchment level, I think, is really important. Thank you for that. Let me then move to Maitri, who is joining us online. We can see you, bold and beautiful, Maitri. You're big on our screen here in Stockholm. Wonderful. Maitri is leading the Water Youth Network. And let me just say, it's wonderful that both sort of global networks of youth are involved in this initiative. Carolina in the World Youth Parliament for Water, and now Maitri in the Water Youth Network. Maitri, can you share a little bit about, we heard Ashton speak earlier on, and of course Carolina is moderating the session. How can we add more kind of, we speak about urgency, right, in collective action, or urgency to address water security. What does that mean for youth exactly? What does it look like, and how do we add this urgency into our collective action?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Firstly, it's nice to be here despite all the technical glitches. Really getting back at your questioning, I think today we really stand at a critical juncture in our pursuit for water security, wherein we're looking at a future for water that's a water for all, regardless of barriers and all borders. Now, as the previous panel has already laid out, these dialogues, of which I was a part of, one of the youth co-hosts, they really offer us a roadmap as laid out. We have 8 missions, and then we have things around it. A series of ambitious missions that really require a unified effort to become reality, very well laid out. But no matter how well we conceive this, they will tend to remain dormant without the sense of urgency. And urgency, we're not talking about as a sense of haste, but it's really an acknowledgement that every drop is saved, every sustainable practice is embraced, and every collaborative endeavor makes a difference, not just today, but for generations to come. So, really, with this background, getting back at your question, how do you really bring the sense of urgency and what do youth have to offer here? That's what I'd like to highlight. And I have really 4 quick things to add up here. One is urgency demands a heightened awareness. It's very simple, very trivial often, but it's so important that we don't realize the importance of it. And we as youth, with decent skills of digital platforms and social networks, we have the means to amplify awareness beyond borders. By really leveraging on our reach and influence, we try and disseminate the knowledge not just about the challenges, but also the different solutions we are trying to offer within this space. And this is across continents, not really divided by borders. And when young voices resonate, they really resonate loudly, and that's the voice we are leveraging on. The second is also the urgency thrives on innovation. As everybody has already said, uh, innovation really sparks new things to happen, right? And we as young people are not burdened by preconceived notions or routines. We're moving past that. And we try and view challenges as more opportunities than a setback. So, really encouraging youth led hubs and platforms that are already happening, but it just needs to be scaled up more. We can really try and change how we look at water management, how are we looking at water efficiency, and how are we looking at water conservation. And the third, I think this is set throughout the conversation. Urgency blossoms only and only through collaboration, right? And as youth, our ability to connect across different backgrounds is a tool of immense power. We've seen that it's helped us a lot, and that's why we stand here together as a bunch of organizations with a unified voice. And the TFWS is also another example of how collaborative spirit really can make a difference. And we as youth co-hosts, we felt pretty included on how we can really amplify the exchange of ideas, expertise, and resources. So more such dialogues that bridge gaps between sectors, cultures, most importantly, generations, we will harness the collective knowledge that fuels this change. And last but never the least, I've always advocated for this through all my conversations, is we as youth embody the torchbearers of long-term vision. Now, when we talk about urgency, we are not talking about short-term fixes. The time has gone for that. We're really looking at means of laying a foundation for an enduring solution that's going to sustain. And we as young people, with our lives stretched out, we try and understand the need for sustainability, like everybody is. And more than anybody, we don't have a choice. We'll have to go that route. And by making mindful choices in our daily lives, advocating for policies that safeguard water resources, and really taking up practices that ensure future viability, we try to be examples of foresight. We're not really there, but we try. So, I mean, in very literary sense, if I have to say, if urgency is the heartbeat for collective action, then maybe youth are the pulse. And the future of what we're imagining to be a safe and inclusive one, it's not going to remain as an aspiration. We are trying to bring it to a reality. So yeah, these are some things on how we're really trying to, add the sense of urgency to collective action. So I'd just like to stop there.
Thanks so much, Maitri. Really, so many gold nuggets in what you said around youth being the pulse. And I think, the reason why we wanted you to answer this question of urgency is you see certainly a lot of really internalizing of principles around sustainability, principles around collective action in youth networks, perhaps more now than what we did, say, 10 years ago. So really commendable work that you're doing. Thanks for that. Let's open it up and just get a few reactions or questions or comments from the audience, if that's okay. I think we have time. I know Ellie is also online with the chat moderation. So I just wanted to do a quick check-in to see if there are any questions or comments. Ellie, from your side, anything coming out?
Hi, thank
Hi.
you. Perfect. Oh, thank you very much. Yes, so we do have a chat working, so I'd really encourage people online. I think you need to maybe not have the video on full screen for those who are online if you'd like to contribute to the chat. But we have had a really interesting comment here around catalyzing collective action and just the importance of remuneration to really create meaningful engagement with stakeholders, and so not sort of just relying on people's sort of spare time or understanding the importance to really get this genuine and to account for capacity. So yeah, I think that was a really good point that we've had from the chat, but we'd really encourage more questions to come through. Please do.
That's a really interesting question, because I don't think had we remunerated our process, we would be able to afford the richness that came out of it, to be honest. But it's an interesting one, especially if you're wanting to bring farmers into the room, at the table, community groups into the room. How do you do that? And of course, you need to incentivize, I think, is also key. Great, thank you. Let's see if there are any other questions or comments from the audience here in person. Yeah, sure. Oh, let's take the hand, and then you can, Vina, please. Thank you. Please introduce yourself, and you can go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Dr. Simon Damkjær. I am from Denmark. I appreciate that we have said we will not talk about political will, but I have to make a comment, thanks to all the speakers. I think in order to achieve sustainable water management, we need to properly have effective public administration and for governments to basically use this innovative platform to reclaim digital bureaucracy. I work for a Danish company. We're called Seabrain. We provide these solutions for digitizing and expediting environmental assessments and permits. And in Denmark, 19 out of 21 ministries actually run on our platform. We are probably the most digitized country in the world in the public administration, and we committed all of our digital blueprints back in March in the UN water sector. So I'd like to know from people of the South Africa government whether you've done any sort of gaps analysis in order to identify where you have bottlenecks in your public administration when it relates to things such as impact assessments, permits, and licensing, and how you, if you've done such gap analysis, whether you've actually taken everybody on board or whether it stays at the political level. It's just for facilitating and expediting processes in order to get a sustainable water future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Jennifer? Oh, do you want to respond to that? Okay. Let me just see if there's any other questions or comments before we take Jennifer and Vina. Yes, thank you. You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Tatiana. I'm an independent consultant based in the UK. I just want to ask for the youth. So I'm really interested in learning more on how to engage youth in planning for the future, because I think that makes sense. So taking on what was said before about instead of saying, what do we have, is asking, what do you need? What does the youth need, and how do we, as seasoned professionals, engage youth in water security and water sector in general?
Great, thanks for that. And I think that can go to Maitri, but also Caroline, if you want to weigh in on that, feel free. Let's take some responses, if that's okay. So I'll go to Vina, and then Jennifer, and Maitri or Caroline, if you want to respond.
I just wanted to respond on the comment on remuneration. Just to point out that remuneration is not always necessarily monetary, but paying close attention to quid pro quo in general. And sometimes what might be valuable can be non-monetary, it can be visibility, it can be other kinds of things. And so I think it's a good point, but we don't need to think about it in monetary terms.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Jen, did you want to respond to the digital question or others?
Yes, I wanted to comment, but I can also weigh in on that one. Inga, I think, just looking at that 8 missions that we have, I think for me it's critical that we don't deal with a mission on its own. They're interrelated. Each one will result in us being able to fast track the others. I think that for me becomes critical. The second part is, the role of business and private sector in ensuring that we do get this water secure future that's sustainable. And we've learned from our case studies where we're working with communities and how big business still wants scale, large use, quick return in terms of, you're growing your crops or your livestock and all of that. But we are very silent in the room around really trying to break it down and say, let's take it to a catchment level and make things more sustainably used and ensure that there is effective and efficient use of the resource at the localized level. And big business has not really relooked that. They still are moving further. Yes, there may be a lot of innovation in terms of technologies they use to sustainably use, but you still have to haul from all of those small farmers to a big place and then to another place, and that also adds towards the unsustainability of it all. But in South Africa, yes, the policy environment in terms of procurement is very difficult, and linking that to the catchment and localized scale is what becomes important, because then decisions can be taken at a local or a district or a provincial level. But once we're doing everything en masse, so big, nationwide, it really makes it a bit tricky for this water secure future that we really have an ambition for. Thank you.
Thanks. Really good. Did you want to add? Yeah. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Yes, in South Africa, we continuously review our EIAs, and also we rely quite a lot on, where possible, on technology, because our country is quite vast. And as Jennifer indicated, decisions are made at different levels, and there's a consultative process. Like, we've got legislation that ensures participation. So whenever a new policy or an improvement in an EIA process comes through, they'll have consultation process, as Jennifer indicated, at all different spheres, like from your national to provincial and also to local level, to ensure that everybody is brought on board. Yeah.
Thanks, Gabriel. Maitri or Carolina, did you either want to address the question on how to engage youth networks? Or youth in general, not only networks, right? That was the question. Okay. Maitri?
I can take a stab at it, and Caroline can help me with that. I think, firstly, I think the appreciation of having youth is really nice. That's what we were advocating for. One of the biggest things that we face at every step, perhaps, is the lack of enough skills, the lack of enough experience, the lack of enough building capacity. So maybe what we're really looking for is a space not just to enhance the skills we have, but also to make those mistakes, learn from them, and come up with a better set of skills, right? I think that's one ask from every sector that we're trying to work with, because that will help us, put us in a space where we'll be able to contribute to a higher level of decision making. So that's one way. Maybe Carolina can add something up there.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. Did you want to add anything? Kiara, could you just share the microphone, please?
I'll be quick. I know we're running out of time. To sort of add on to what Maitreyi said, feedback loops. So working together in collaboration, not having young people in one area and having the space to do it alone, but also getting positive criticism back in a constructive way in which we can dialogue, so we can learn together. We don't have everything right, obviously, because if we did, we wouldn't all be at these conferences every year. And then also, I think outreach, think about what kind of young people are you involving in? Are there spaces in which young people can step up? Where are those spaces created, if anywhere? And if not, where can they be created? I think that's sort of how this co-guardianship came about. Mark said, yeah, we wanted to include youth, and we looked around and said, no young persons here. And so you found the space and you invited us in, and we've created it together. And so I think that that's a really great example of how to do it. So keeping it top of mind. And also kind of as a young person, right, I think we're a bit more generalists as we have less experience. So helping shape the direction. What are the skill sets that will make us most valuable? We're all trying to make a positive difference in water, and there's so many ways to do that. So figuring out how to do that and getting that feedback from you all also is really helpful. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that. I mean, if I also reflect back on our process, one of the big messages or recommendations from the youth networks that were involved was moving beyond tokenism. And so that meant that it wasn't just, enough to have youth in the room, but they actually, as Carolina said, part of the whole design and the leadership of initiatives like this. So for me, that was quite a sort of real standout message to us, in the sector. But also that acknowledging that youth is not a homogeneous group, right? There's so many intersectionalities with youth, and recognizing that as well. Anyway, I think I can certainly go on and on forever, but we do need to wrap this up soon. So thank you so much to the panel. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And we look forward to continuing our partnership and working with you in this initiative. And hopefully next year we can come back and really show some of the no pressure, Mark, or Inga, I guess, right? All of us. We can show some of the results 1 year down the line. So thank you so much once again. And I'm going to hand it over to Mark now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure of wrapping up and giving a summary of what we've experienced in the last hour and a half. I want to start actually with the two lessons about working with youth in this process that I learned. The first was, and Carolina, you just referred to, we came up with this idea of youth co-guardianship for the process to try and make sure that it was top of mind and that we were connected in the ways that we needed. One thing that as we went along that struck me very clearly was we moved from talking about youth engagement to youth in leadership. So not just having youth at the table, but making sure when they're at the table, given that we're talking about the future, having youth in the leadership group. And I don't know if we always get there, but we strive to do that. The second was recognizing, another lesson in the process, was recognizing that when youth come to the table, they come as professionals. They come with their own professionalisms. And so we need to make sure that we're working with them using the skills and knowledge and perspectives that they have from their own professionalisms. Anyways, just a side note. I want to begin my summary by thanking all of our partners who came together to build this session and create the dialogue that we've just experienced, and the contributors, all of our speakers and panelists that we've had, which I felt has been a very rich discussion, reflecting very much the thinking that we're in the process of, moving from the recognition of the need for innovation, yes, as we look to the future, but the recognition that to do that well, we have to have everyone on board, as I think Jennifer said. We have to have everyone on board. So how do you really do that? And we don't have all the answers, but we're on that trajectory. So thank you for that very rich dialogue. If you recall, the question that we posed for the session was, can we use missions shared across actors to catalyze collective action for innovation on water security? And I was very grateful to Jennifer for your keynote presentation, in which I thought you really brought to us an exemplar for how to do that and why to do that, why working with a mission orientation and bringing collective action to back up and move forward that mission orientation, how that relates to the wider demands of innovation and innovation systems, and the South African experience of really thinking through concretely how do you evolve innovation systems so that they're oriented towards real transformative change that is appropriate for addressing very complex problems. Water is full of very complex problems, but we layer into that issues of inclusion and justice alongside sustainability and climate. And to do that, everyone has to be on board. Governments, business communities, engaging from the bottom up, and building innovation through that collective action approach. I think as we heard from then the panelists and moved on to those parts of the discussion, it was very clear to me that there is appetite. There is real appetite for trying to engage a really meaningful collective action process that relates innovation to the kinds of change and depth of change that we need to be engaged with. The transformative futures process that we have, many of those here today, that we have collectively built over the last year, has started to help people to think through what change does that mean for the way that I work? What change does that mean for the way that my organization needs to engage? So we heard from Buenos Aires, from Gonzalo, about the water utility recognizing through the engagement in this process, the criticality of agriculture in their business, the criticality of engaging with the future and engaging with others to think about what the future means. We heard from Ashton about the need to build those futures very proactively. He encouraged us that water security is possible, and we can reach it as long as we work with young people and live these missions. And there is broader resonance, I think, in the wider community that hopefully is in this building, and then the wider communities around that. There is broader resonance emerging, as you reflected, Xavier, from the work that the Global Commission is doing, and the focus that process is bringing from the level at which that process works, which is a very high level, for coalitions for action, and wondering how do we galvanize that in very meaningful ways. And as we do that, I think, Mark Fletcher, we're going to need to put this quote that you gave us onto screens and onto billboards. So we need missions around which we can align. They should be strings that combine to create rope that we can all pull together on. I mean, I think that's perfect. So thank you for that, Mark. So then the question is, well, how do we enable this? How do we enable a means to move forward with what is a complex, complex problems, it's a complex agenda around which we will need to take things forward. So we need collective, the value of collective action emerges for people around what it brings to us in terms of moving to scale. So we heard about that business is interested in collective action because it helps them move to scale. But to do that, that needs government, it needs science, it needs communities to be working together from the bottom up with the collective action processes. And it needs policies and policy frameworks that enable that and encourage that and provide the right kinds of incentives for that. We need to put users at the center, to flip, as Vina said, to flip the conventional wisdom around. Maybe it's not wisdom, but conventional thinking. Flip the conventional thinking around. Put users at the center to drive collective action so that we're building a pull factor around all of this, and particularly around what we focus on in research and what science we bring to the table. Really flipping things around and building that pull factor. So being very clear about what do users need and what are the services that we in science and research and innovation and knowledge, what are the services that we can bring to help meet those needs. And that's, as you said, it's very simple, but it's very important for everyone to think through what that means. Mission thinking helps us with alignment, it helps us with convergence, it helps us with cascading across scales. In water, there's so much dialogue that works, whether it's at global scale all the way through to very local scales. And mission thinking can help us with that cross-scale dialogue as well. We need to drive urgency, and youth are at the forefront of driving that urgency because, as we heard, there's no choice. Urgency is the heartbeat for collective action, we heard, and youth is the pulse. So, to close then, some next steps. We've been working on this initiative for about the last year. We have a commitment to the Water Action Agenda around which we need to take the momentum that we have and continue to build that forwards. That requires, in our estimation, coalitions to come together to look at how we build this collective action approach to those various missions. one of our lessons is that those coalitions, they gain most traction, as we heard from Nepal, they gain most traction when we do that from the bottom up, at national and regional level to a degree. But there is also a role, a message here to the community here in Stockholm, there is also a role we feel at global level to help catalyze and continue to catalyze through communications, through advocacy, to help catalyze that, that process of collective action around these missions. So we invite everyone to continue thinking with us and to continue building momentum around those sets of objectives. So thank you all very much, and thanks for a tremendous session.